I changed the talk title. It didn't save. Oh, well, surprise. I changed it to 5 Steps to Freedom, which is a book by Dr. John Waterhouse, who has a church in South Carolina. And I changed it because this whole month we are going to be talking about spiritual mind treatment. And as I started to read the book, it dawned on me, when we teach spiritual mind treatment, and we teach it right out of the gate, your very first class, it's like, here's a spiritual mind treatment. Here's the 5 steps of treatment. And it's a lot to absorb. And I don't really believe that we give it justice or necessarily the time and space for people to really absorb what that means, what it means to do a 5-step treatment. What are the steps, and why am I doing the steps, and what do the steps mean? So first of all, Ernest Holmes did not pray in steps, just so you know. Somebody else came up with the steps, and it's a teaching tool. It's a teaching tool pretty much to get people away from beseeching a God that sits in on a throne up in heaven and looks down on us with a tablet and starts keeping score. I don't know if that's still that true God. I don't think I've balanced my books yet. I think I'm still tilting. And so when I found this philosophy and found out that that's not the belief here, that what we believe here is that there's a power and a presence over, through us, around us, that it is everywhere. Ernest Holmes used to say to children, there is not a spot that God is not. I want you to breathe that in for a minute and really think about what that means. And when you breathe that in, one of the gifts that John Rosenberg gave us last week is, he said, I want you to take a breath through your nose for a minute. And you realize that where you feel the air is in your head, right? Now take a breath in through your mouth. And immediately you feel it in your throat, and it starts to sink into your body. And so today, if I say, let's just take a breath together, consciously try to think about yawning and taking a breath through your mouth, okay? Because I think that it's important that we stay in our bodies when we start talking about God. And so what I've decided to do, instead of talking about spiritual mind treatment, all 4 weeks, I decided I was going to take a step and dedicate a service to each step. And so we're going to be building a spiritual mind treatment. So when we meet at the beach on the 26th of August, if you so desire, you will have written a spiritual mind treatment, except for the last 2 steps, which are pretty, compared to the rest, they're pretty easy. It's give thanks and release it. I will talk about that on that Sunday. But if anybody wants to stand up and read or give a spiritual mind treatment in front of their community that Sunday, I will make space for that. Why would you want to do that? Because there's power when people hear your prayers. There is power when no, I don't. Thank you so much. There is power when you speak something out loud to a group of people, and it's frightening, but here's what I know to be true about this community, every Science of Mind community. Whether you're a singer, whether it's the first time you've facilitated, where it's the first time you've ever stood behind a mic, people just love the fact that you had the courage to do it. And so I invite you, not long ones, and I know a lot of you are like, yeah, but the practitioners, you heard Karen up here, and one of the things you have to know is that was beautiful and amazing. And the divine loves that and loves very succinct, what we call laser prayers. So don't think you can't pray. Because what is prayer? Prayer is talking to God. So what do we believe here? Each one of us is God in form, right? Each one of us talks to each other, right? Whether we say nice things or not nice things, we're talking to God. That's a prayer. That's a prayer. And that is something that I consciously have to remind myself all the time. Because if it's the thinking, the words out loud have more power. But if it's the thinking too, then, what I'm doing with myself right now is just stop saying something out loud, which is a good first move. But it's getting to the point where I am so connected to the thing itself, that I am so in line with that divine presence that is me, that I absolutely give up judgment and don't have those thoughts. Anybody there yet? Okay, Dalai Lama, I'll give it to him. I don't know a lot of people that are, and that's okay, because I really believe that one of the reasons that we're all here is we're ever expanding our stream of consciousness. Does everybody know what that means? So we are, at the core of who we are, that God sense, that place within us. We are a stream of consciousness. Always has been, always will be, is right here and right now. That is our God essence. That's that place in us. Let me think if I can remember exactly what Karen said. Something about dancing. Did you not? Something about, not from him, I think in your prayer. No, it was in him. Something about dancing. That you let that inner soul dance. So I will let all of you know, because some of you may wonder, some of you may have not noticed, that we have a new framed portrait in the back, and she's hanging there particularly for me, although all of us can take advantage of it. And it's because when I'm standing up here, she reminds me that I'm supposed to dance. She reminds me that I'm supposed to have fun. She reminds me that don't get so caught up in what people think or what people say, because you know what? We all have an opinion. We all have an opinion. So that's what prayer is. Every time we say anything, it's a prayer. Because the universe is always responding back to us what? Yes. It's never saying no. It's never saying, you want to rethink that just a minute. It says yes. Now it may give us little nudges sometimes. John talked about that last week, being out on the skinny branch. That you may get those little niggles that say, oh, honey, are you sure? And then if you're like me, it's like, hush. Of course I'm sure. I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't sure. And then you get the result of what's going to happen, even though there was that little forewarning inner voice that was saying, seriously, I'm trying to, So that's that little voice within. I suggest we listen to it. We each have our own. You don't get to listen to mine, which is good for you. I don't get to listen to yours, which is good for me. And it is a little voice, and it's there to guide us and to help us and to help us navigate life. And because we have free will, it doesn't pull us or push us in the direction it thinks we should go. It's just a voice, and we get to say yes or no. And I look at my life sometimes and go, wonder what would have happened if I'd really listened to that voice. Really listened. One thing that would have happened, and I'm not willing to change my life for this, I probably wouldn't have met my husband. So I'm good that I said no to all the things in my life that I did. So our beliefs filter our experiences. And you need to know that, because this thing that we're doing here, this game of life, is kind of an illusion. It seems and feels and is very real to us. And John Waterhouse, in his book, shared a story that I loved about how we get defined by our experiences and our beliefs. So John has always lived in the South, always. And he was in in Colorado, at a conference. And then when he was leaving Colorado, he had heard that it had snowed in South Carolina. And he said, for somebody that's growing up in the South, when they tell you there's snow, You get like a little kid. You're so excited. Oh my God, there's snow. Different from people who grow up in California, or in Colorado or Utah, where they're like, is it ever not going to snow? So, different experiences, right? He was excited. So he's on the plane and he's talking to the guy next to him, and the guy next to him also South Carolina, lived there his whole life, and they're talking, and John looks out the plane window as it's landing. He goes, oh, there's snow out there. And the guy next to him goes, there's no snow. He goes, no, I see snow. And the guy said, I talked to my wife today, and it did snow in South Carolina today, and then as usual, the sun came out, and by noon, all the snow was gone. And the reality was that when John got off the plane, there was no snow. And yet what his eye created out of the airplane window was snow on the ground, because that's what he wanted to see. Now, think about that in other areas of your life. This might be a good time to take a breath through your mouth. Have you ever been so sure of something? So sure. And then it's just not reality. Yeah, all of us have. And so just to be cognizant of that, it's not like it's never going to happen again now that I've put voice to it. We're probably all going to do it again. It's to be mindful of it. To realize, oh, I'm not always 100% right. Right? Am I the only one that always thought I was 100% right? Come on, I know that's not true. I know that's not true. So spiritual mind treatment, what we teach here, is just a powerful way to pray. So in his book, he calls it's a power prayer. It is a power prayer. And it is different from prayers of different spiritual beliefs, because we don't beseech anything. So the first step is recognition. And recognition means I know God is, without a doubt. And the first two steps of treatment, I tell this to practitioner students, any class I teach, I say this. If you absolutely shift your consciousness in the first two steps of treatment, really what comes out of your mouth the next three steps doesn't matter, because you are so connected, it's golden. So in that first step, recognition, God is omnipresent. Now, that means God's everywhere. And omnipresent is not a new thought term. Omnipresence is a term that's used in all different kinds of religions, and they use it for different reasons. If God's everywhere and you believe God is holding judgment over you, then God's following you around everywhere you do and taking notice of right, wrong, indifferent. Oh, she swore again. She keeps telling her community she's going to give up swearing in her car. There she goes again. God is everywhere, right? No matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, God is there. Because, like Ernest Holmes said, there's not a spot that God is not. Everywhere. Now, what we believe is, yes, God is everywhere. And that is so powerful and so magnificent to know that and to own that. God is everywhere. Oh my goodness, no matter where I go, no matter what I'm doing, I am with it always, because it is part of who I am. So I'm never alone. Ever alone. And if God is everywhere, then God is in all those people I disagree with. All of those people that I have chosen not to like. All of those people I love dearly. All of those, everywhere. Everywhere. All the animals. Everywhere. In the chair you're sitting in. Everywhere. Because we believe God is energy. And energy, scientists have proved, is everywhere. We just see energy vibrating closer together to take form on the planet. So God is everywhere. And it's important when you start to shift your consciousness, and it's important when you start to pray, that you really get and understand that concept, that God is everywhere. So I'm never alone. And the choice between worrying about something and surrendering something becomes easier. Does that make sense? Yes? Anybody have a question about everywhere? All right. So then we have God is omniscient. And again, formerly this was used kind of as a fear-based tool. God's all-knowing. So your mom and dad may not know what you're doing at school, but you better get into that confessional box on Saturday and let somebody know, because God already knows. God's all-knowing. So there's that place that we used to use God as a, I want to say teaching tool. That's a little kind. We used to use God as a fear-based way to get people to do what we wanted them to do. God hasn't changed. God never changed. It's the way we use God. Does that make sense? So it's the way God was used. And if you look, I took a class one time. It was Understanding the Bible. And he said, do not read the Bible sitting in your home with your heat and, your stereo going nicely in the background, and you've got a candle lit. He said it's a great way to read the Bible. And the Bible was written in a time when people were walking around in sandals in the desert, killing animals for food. So the stories take on a different meaning when you take the time, instead of just reading it, to first of all, take that breath and go back and imagine. I wonder what life was like way back 2,000 plus years ago. What was life like? But God was still all-knowing. It was just that it was used differently. So all-knowing here means that we are living in the consciousness of the divine right here and right now. So I want you to imagine, if we're living in the consciousness of the divine, everybody who has ever lived that we know or don't know about is living in that consciousness. Their thoughts are there, because any thought that's ever been thought, that ever will be thought, it's in that mind of God already. So if you really wanted to have a conversation with Jesus, you sit down, create the space, and invite Jesus into your meditation. Or whomever. Right? So God is all-knowing. So all the knowledge, when somebody comes up with something new, in the mind of God, it already existed. We as humans just needed to have things line up appropriately for that to come into form. One of the things that Marianne Williamson said when I went to see her, and I loved it, was if you state a statement, and she said the word problem. So let's say if you have a problem, the minute you state it, the answer is in the mind of God already. Right? The answer is already there. The manifestation hasn't happened yet. That's what we get to practice here, is how do I bring that into form? If I have a problem, then what is my intention to shift the problem into an opportunity, and then make that opportunity into a manifestation that works golden in my life? That's what all-knowing means. The answer's already there. We just don't like to surrender. Well, I shouldn't say we. I sometimes don't like to surrender control of the manifestation to something that I can't see. And sometimes when I pray, I have a time frame on when that should appear. And when it doesn't appear in my time frame, I sometimes get a little, there's a P word that's coming to my mind, and I'll say, I get perturbed. I get a little perturbed. And what happens when you get perturbed after you've prayed for something to come into your life? You've just unhooked your prayer. Because your perturbedness has now I don't know if that's a word. Your perturbedness, but I'm going to use it again. And if I say it 3 times, I think the dictionary will put it in there. Your perturbedness now becomes your prayer. And so now what God has said yes to is, oh, Gayle likes to be perturbed. Let me see how many times I can have that show up in her life. That is something that I practice all the time. All the time. Like, stay in your body. Stay in your body. It's okay. Everything's going to work out just great. You know, I was in a huge panic about getting my mic on. And I called Anna in to help me. And what I realized had happened is she did exactly what I told her to do, but this is a 2-piece outfit. And so they were separated by the dress. And when they were plugged in, then the dress was hiked up. And when I pulled the dress down, because I was in a panic to get back in here, it unplugged it. That might not make sense. It makes perfect sense to me. And so that's kind of like life, right? We don't take time. One of the things, as I was standing up here holding the mic and talking through it, Courtney looked at me and she said, just take a breath and take your time. Sometimes we have to remind each other, it's going to be okay. You're going to have plenty of time. Plenty of time. Each and every one of us have all the time necessary to do anything we want to do. We just have to know that, instead of the panic of, I'll never get that done. There's not enough time. Because what is that creating if God's always listening to us? You're never going to have enough time. Ever. Because God's always saying yes. So, oh, you don't want enough time? Okay. I'll just have people keep calling you. I'll have, whatever. You'll never have enough time. You need to shift your consciousness, because this is about you and your energy and your reality. So if you want time and you keep saying, or another one, I can't do something, I'm broke. Don't say that to the universe, please. Never claim that you're broke. Never claim you don't have enough money. I choose to spend my money differently right now. Now, in reality, the reason might be exactly the same. Right? The energy is entirely different. Because the truth of the matter is, if you really want to go out to dinner, regardless of what your checking account is looking like, you will go to dinner, right? If you really want to do it. And so the truth is, why own I can't because I'm broke? Own, I'm just choosing not to spend my money that way. It's lighter, and it's telling the universe, I am willing to shift my consciousness around my financial good. And that's in anything that we do. Anything. And then God is omnipotent. Again, this was a battering ram. God is all powerful. Oh no, said the people long ago. And imagine, if you will, the sun coming up. And then they really didn't know, like when it went down, is it going to come back up? What if it goes away and we are in darkness all the time? Oh, there it is again. Yay. It takes a while. Oh, it's got a rhythm here. We're going to start tracking the rhythm. And so all powerful. God is in and through and as everything. All powerful. It means that God is in your prayers. God is in your thoughts. It's physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's psychic. When people talk about angels, they're talking about God. It's just another form of the divine. Your guides. We all have guides. It's God in a different form. Don't get put off by what people choose to call the divine, because it's everything. And we all get to call it what we want to. Some people, especially in this philosophy, don't use the word God anymore because they've got all kinds of reasons. Well, people, they've come from different religions and they're upset with the word of God. And if you are, I apologize. To me, it's a word that when I say God, you all know what I'm talking about, don't you? If I say energy, some of you might think Puget Power? Seattle City Light? What's she talking about? So God is, I use it just because I'm very comfortable with it, number one, because it has no juju for me, because I wasn't raised in a religion to create any juju around the word. And it's just universal, so that if anybody comes in and I use the word, they're like, oh, I know what she's talking about. I got issues with it. I know what but maybe I'll listen to her and maybe I won't have issues. Because we want to shift our consciousness in prayer from God being something evil or demanding or a father figure, controlling, thank you, Diane, to something that is loving, compassionate, grace, those things that are good, I choose to call God. Those things that are good, I choose to call God. Because here's the thing. It cannot be a house divided against itself, so it's only one thing. If it was two things, we'd have chaos and discontent all the time, everywhere. Now, some of you think we got chaos right now. Maybe we do. To some people, we don't. Right? So that's our human perception of what's happening. But we would have it if we had two energies working against each other all the time. That's an earthly experience. It's an opportunity for us to grow into that which we truly are, God in form. So recognition, knowing that God is those things. It is one, it is omnipresence, it is omnipotent, and it is omniscient. You start from there. You kind of own that. Because next week what we're going to get to do is, as you own that for it, you're going to learn to own it for yourself. So this week I invite each one of you to practice writing down just I know God is, and pick a word. Pick a word of good. I know God is love. I know God is harmony. Whatever. I know God is sunshine. Whatever you choose, pick that word, because we're going to kind of build a prayer. And so that is your invitation to do this week, is just create a little list of I know God is. And I know because you only know for yourself, right? I only know what I know. I can't say I know Courtney thinks God is this. I know for Courtney, but I don't know what Courtney thinks about God. That's between Courtney and God. Make sense? All right, any questions? Let's pray. So standing here in the essence, in the center, in that container of good that I know and choose to call God, knowing that God is that magnificent thing itself. It is a power and a presence that is everywhere. There truly is not a spot that God is not. It is over us. It is around us. It is through us. It is as us. We are it in form. And so we claim that right here and right now. We know that truth. We hold that as the absolute essence of who we are. I know it for myself. I know it for each one of you. And because I know it for each one of you, what I claim for you this week is you claim for yourself, I am God in form, or whatever you choose to call it. I am it in form. I am moving through life knowing that I am it in form, which means I am connected to everyone everywhere. We're all one playfield, one mind. Karen loved it when she said each of us a unique medicine for ourselves and for each other. So I say thank you, God. Thank you for this community. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity to know and to claim God as my source, my supply, and my sustenance. I turn all these words over knowing that as I release them into that bed of good, that infinite field of possibility, I let go, I let God, and so it is. Namaste.